Hey everybody, so as we start Chapter 7, Lesson 3, remember that our essential question that we're working with here is why do nations go to war? We've talked about all the ways in which America prepared for war and why it went to war. We talked about why World War I happened to begin with in 1914, and then today we'll take a look at how nations thought they could win this war, right? Because you don't go to war unless you think you can win war. So a quick reminder here that what you're looking at is the countries that were in World War I in Europe, not including the United States. In red, you have the Central Powers, Germany, Austria, Hungary, and the Ottoman Empire. And in green, you have the Allied powers. You have France, Great Britain, and Russia, and the backbone of the Allies. And then you have Italy as well. And so these countries will be fighting this war. They think they can win. But what they don't realize is that war has changed. Combat in World War I is an entirely new thing at a level of death unbefore noticed by anyone anywhere. Just for example, artillery alone, which had been used for hundreds of years, cannons, were so deadly that they kill hundreds of thousands of people. In fact, being killed from an artillery shell fired from miles away kills more people than any other weapon in World War I. Now you have all these trenches dropping on your head and you're out here in the open and they're miles away and you can't shoot back. How do you protect yourself from that kind of artillery? This is just one example of how nations were unprepared for this war. Because to protect themselves, some of these troops, they began digging trenches. They dig these holes in the ground like this one right here, or this one that you can see these guys running in. They line it with barbed wire like you can see above that trench right there to protect themselves. They put landmines around them to protect themselves, trying to protect themselves from artillery and the enemy. They have machine guns set up to cover any approach so that if you come towards them in these trenches, you're going to be slaughtered. Death happens in this war in an unprecedented scale. People never understood that a war like this, with modern technology, could cause so many deaths. Here's a top-down view of a battlefield so you can understand what I mean by trenches. Here is the front line, right? And then you have other trenches behind it where reinforcements wait. Here's the enemy's front line and the trenches behind them. And then here's no man's land in the middle, where you would see people run back and forth to attack the trenches. This is where you would see all the artillery shells firing. This is where you would see the landmines and the machine guns peppered all along these trenches, firing at you as you would run up. It was hell for these soldiers to be running across this no man's land into these trenches to fight. And remember, you dug those trenches to protect yourself from artillery. So there's all kinds of new technology being used out there during this war. I've mentioned a couple of it already. Some other new technologies, and think about it, it makes sense, right? So we hide in a trench to protect ourselves from artillery. So how do we kill people if we can't really hit them effectively with artillery anymore? I know. We make artillery shells that include poison gas, so that even if we miss our enemy, when it explodes, the poison gas will spread out all over the place and still kill people. Fabulous. That's what this guy's suffering from right here, a poison gas attack, chlorine attack. We have aerial combat right here, where airplanes, which were new, are used in fighting for the first time ever. We have tanks being used for the first time ever. Tanks that are used to cross no man's land so that soldiers aren't killed with mines or can be destroyed with machine guns. They're able to survive. We do all kinds of things to get soldiers to the battlefield in new ways to protect them, like the convoy system, where you see a group of warships traveling with merchant ships and troop vessels to protect the troops. And these technologies, like the convoy system, are incredibly effective. In fact, the convoy system is so effective, no American troop ships are sunk on the way to Europe during World War I. So we're able to get our supplies and materials there without having to worry at all about losses from German submarines or other warships. But what we need to realize is that with all of this death, there comes a price. I mean, how long are people supposed to fight anyway with this level of death where millions upon millions of people, and that's not an exaggeration, we're talking about millions of dead people on both sides. How long are you supposed to put up with that? Slowly, the countries begin to lose the will to fight. These countries think they can win, but when you face millions of casualties, it's going to be hard to keep your people willing to fight that war. So, for example, the Central Powers experience revolution after revolution after revolution. Austria-Hungary, there's a revolution. They overthrow their emperor. Ottoman Empire, revolution. They overthrow the caliph. Germany, revolution. They get rid of their emperor. These people are upset because their governments led them into a war where millions of people have died. In Russia, there's one of the most important revolutions in human history. A guy named Vladimir Lenin, that's this guy right here that I'm circling with the marker. Vladimir Lenin, he's right there underneath my head. He's the leader of a political party in Russia called the Bolsheviks. They believe in communism, which is government control of not just business, that's just socialism, but control of everything. He throws a revolution, the people follow him, and he establishes a new communist government, a dictatorship, where the government will control all things and give equal rights to everybody. It'll control your life, the jobs you have, your economy. It will remove wealth inequality. Everyone will be equal. There will be no rich, no poor. Everyone will be equal. At least that's the idea. We'll see if that plays out as we go along. So these revolutions strike country after country after country, and if you think about it, that's four of the really big players, Austria-Hungary, Ottoman Empire, Germany, and Russia, all with huge revolutions. So we have these countries no longer willing to fight. The death is unbelievable. So what happens is, in November of 1918, November 11th, we call that Veterans Day now, the fighting stops because of an armistice. It's a truce, not a treaty. Not a treaty, a truce. And we see a temporary end to the fighting while the parties try and figure out a final peace treaty. So everyone gets together who fought in World War I at Versailles Palace in France, in Paris. President Wilson shows up. He has a peace plan idea. It's called the 14 Points, and the goal was to get rid of the causes of war, but everybody else is more interested. Britain, France, Russia, Italy, etc. They're more interested in punishing Germany for the tremendous amount of deaths that they caused. And so they passed this treaty that has a couple of really important things in it. Number one, they forced Germany to admit guilt in starting World War I. But we know from what we studied that Germany didn't declare war first, and there were lots of causes of World War I. This point is going to make German people very, very angry, including a young German army corporal, a guy named Adolf Hitler, who will use this point over the next 20 years to send his people into another world war. The winners forced Germany to pay reparations right here, money to be paid off for damages, tremendous amounts of money. And you can see it here, $55 billion in 1918. That's trillions of dollars today, hundreds of billions of dollars today. Money that Germany doesn't have, but they're going to force Germany to pay damages. And they're going to destroy empires, the German Empire, Ottoman-Hungary Empire, the Empire of Austria-Hungary, gone. Right? Russian Empire, gone. All going to be cast away. And they're also going to agree to something called a League of Nations, where nations of the world should come together, talk, work together, so that we can never have again another war like this. Our Senate in Congress refuses to sign this treaty because they're afraid that we'll end up in another world war if we join this League of Nations. So to keep us free from foreign conflicts, foreign entanglements, our Senate says no thank you. So what are we left with? We're left with a new Europe, a new Germany. There is no more Austria-Hungary. Now there's Austria, Czechoslovakia, Hungary, Yugoslavia, Romania, Bulgaria. a USSR, because Russia is now gone, and it's the Soviet Union, the United States of Soviet Republics. And we see new countries emerge, like Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, and Poland. These are all new countries, right, that emerge from the fall of all of these empires. Okay? So we'll talk more about this in class.